Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about the 10-episode Netflix mini-series entitled Maid, which stars Margaret Qualley, who some of you may know, who I know from The Leftovers, one of the best shows of all time, and Andy McDowell, who is a legend in the game, who numerous things. I couldn't even run off all the things that Andy McDowell has been in. But this show it revolves around Margaret Qualley's character. Her name's Alex. She is in a abusive relationship with her boyfriend Sean. This happens right at the very beginning, and she leaves him with her daughter Maddie, who is 2 at the time. And essentially, the series is about Alex's struggles with trying to be a single mother, not being very well off, and dealing with everything that comes with being a victim of domestic violence. It's a very heartbreaking story. It can be tough to watch at times. And when I say tough to watch, I don't mean this in the way that I normally mean tough to watch, where it's just like, oh, it's too relatable, but like tough to watch. And like, she just keeps having a hard time. Like, terrible things keep happening to her. And it's like, she just can't get out of this cycle of just bad luck. And what made it really hard for me to watch is that this cycle of bad luck, a lot of this is born out of just your circumstances. I felt almost, I don't want to say guilty watching this, but I felt very fortunate for the life that I've been able to lead, and I felt very sad for Alex's life. But Alex is a fictional character. But people who actually live that sort of life, I felt almost guilt on the inside while watching this. And it's not because I've earned everything that I've gotten. I'm almost 40 years old. I've earned everything that I've gotten. That's all me. I take 1,000 fucking percent credit for everything from my job to the podcast that I do, to this YouTube channel, to the success that I've found in being able to provide for my family. I take all credit for that. But I was born in the circumstances in Detroit. I still grew up in the hood in Detroit, but I was not in a situation where I was dirt poor, where I came from a history of abuse, whether that be child abuse, whether that be domestic abuse, all these kinds of things that can, once you start to grow up and develop into an adult or even a teenager, that these past traumas that can affect you. I was fortunate enough to not have to be born under those circumstances where you got all this extra baggage and trauma that inhibits you from being who you fully want to be in life. And Alex is one of those people, like the rose that grew from concrete. She came from really shitty circumstances. We find out that her mom was abused by her father. She's now is now leaving an abusive relationship with her daughter's father. And it's one of those things where it's like cycle and generational abuse that gets passed down, and generational trauma. But she's not somebody who's satisfied with living that life where it's like, you punch in at your, say, restaurant, you deal with your shitty pay that we pay restaurant servers, you hope for good tips, and you live this life where you're kind of like living day to day, and you head back to the trailer or to the projects or wherever place you might be from with government subsidized housing, and you drink fucking PBR or whatever the fuck you drink, and you just kind of like live that life. Alex wants to be creative. She wants to be an artist, and an artist in the sense of not painting, but like she wants to be a writer, creative artist. And, she wants to do better for her daughter. And because of those circumstances that she grew up in, and because of everything that she has, the baggage, and then also the fact that she doesn't have money at this time, especially from having left her boyfriend, Sean, who was seemingly the primary provider, she has to fight against so much just to do so little. And it feels bad. It made me feel bad just because like she can't do anything. Like, she can't get respect from other people. People treat her like shit just because she's poor, and assume based on certain things that she says or certain things that she does, that not only does she not have money, but she just doesn't even have the capabilities or mental wherewithal to just survive on her own. She's insulted at every turn, every corner. She has to deal with the baggage of being somebody who is trying to escape domestic abuse but does not have like physical violence inflicted on her to the point where she can say, look at this black eye or look at this bloody lip. It's mainly emotional abuse. So she has to deal with that stigma. She has to deal with the mountains and mountains of paperwork that come with trying to get government help, whether that be housing, daycare, discounts on things that other people might have to pay full price for, like rent or things like that. She has to deal with just mountains of paperwork that most people who come from those situations just don't have the ability to manage, and she has to force herself to manage these things. And it's a very powerful story. It's a very interesting one to watch. It can be pretty heartbreaking at times. It's definitely something that I really enjoy, but I'm going to get into some of the finer points. I'm going to try to keep this spoiler free. I don't know where I'm going to end up. Everything that I've said so far is not very spoilery, but I'm going to kind of go through some of the things that I wrote down as notes on things that I wanted to talk about from this show. And I'm going to try to keep it spoiler free, but there's just a few things that I want to use to kind of flesh out what kind of show we're talking about here. So, this show is an indictment on several things that happen, several complexities that exist within this country. And I think the first is how, like I mentioned a moment ago, how we treat people who are struggling. Alex, like I said, she gets treated like shit because she's broke. She gets has assumptions made about her because she can't do anything. Strangers, potential clients treat her like shit. We have Anika Noni Rose is in this, and she's like for the most of the scenes we see her, she treats Alex like shit, and it's like just I don't like people who treat other people like shit for reasons that don't make you better than other people. And when it comes right down to it, there are no reasons that make you better than other people. Like, we're all the same, right? But like, just because somebody is down on their luck right now doesn't mean that they're a piece of shit who you could just talk to any old kind of way. So that kind of stuff really irked me. I didn't like seeing her being treated like that. And we as viewers, we're seeing Alex throughout the course of this series, and we know that she's sharp. We know that she knows what's going on. We know that she's determined. We know that she's courageous. We know that she has all these positive attributes. But on the face of things, she just doesn't have money. And people treat her like, because she doesn't have money, that she also doesn't have the other things that we know she has. And that makes it even harder to watch, because then you think about how maybe you might have looked at somebody like that before. Like, did I look at somebody who maybe had less money than me or less opportunity than me, and not realize that this person really does have it going on? Like, this isn't somebody who is defined by where they came from or their current status in life. You want to look at yourself and go like, am I giving people a fair shot? Am I assuming that because they're struggling now that they're lacking in all these other areas? Because I consider myself to be an incredibly sharp individual, but if I fell on hard times, I don't instantly become stupid and worthless either. Like, I'm still gonna be the same person, but people might just not even give me that respect because they look at me as like, oh, this guy is coming in here trying to get no government housing subsidies and shit. What a piece of shit this guy is. And I'm like, you just don't know who I am. And we treat poor people like that, or people who we just don't understand like that. And I don't know, kind of, I feel like that realization hit me kind of hard that we don't give people a fair shake. And I'm like, what if that was me? And I was just fortunate enough to be born into circumstances where I've been able to avoid being in that situation, but others people might not have. And then they get treated like they don't have the mental capabilities or just the ability to get out of situations. Like, they're assumed to be like yeah, they're not gonna get out of this. It's not for them. They're just relegated to this life. And there are people who decide that they won't be. And I find that to be inspirational. I find that to be sad for people who are out here who might not give them that shot. Also, like I mentioned, it's an indictment on, I think, the government and all the red tape that we make people go through in order to get these basic things that we pat ourselves on the back for this. We as a country, oh, we do this, we do that. We have these opportunities. We're the land of opportunity. Come to America. You can have this, you can have that. But then we make these people who really need this shit have to jump through every hoop, fill out mountains of paperwork just to still live just slightly above poverty. As in, like, you are not, in order to not be literally homeless, if you fill out a stack of paperwork like this big, will help you out. And it's like it's just such an indictment again on how we treat people who are struggling, and and we have to remember that these struggles do not define these people. They might have just fell on hard times. Um, let's see, Alex. I worded this funny in my notes. I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is also an indictment on toxicity, and when I say toxicity, everybody in Alex's circle is very toxic. Her mother, played by Andie MacDowell, who I'm going to talk about in a moment. Her mother is very toxic. Sean, her boyfriend, is very toxic. Her friends are toxic. Like, everything that's going on around her is set up to make her fail. And it's so much so that I feel like that toxicity kind of like bleeds into Alex. So even though we know Alex is sharp and we know Alex is strong and we know that Alex has determination and all of those things, that toxicity can almost become self-defeating. There are moments in this show where Alex has the chance to really turn things around and she fucks it up for herself. And not because Alex is doesn't care or because she doesn't know what she's doing. It's because she doesn't even realize how much the toxic people who have influenced her in her life have fed into her actions and made her do things that are not in her own best interest. And it's just so sad, like I said, to think about people who are born in these situations. They don't have any control over that. Alex doesn't have any control over the fact that she was born to a mother who is not going to be very helpful to her. And we can't even look at Andie MacDowell's character, Paula, her mom, as we can't fully lay guilt on her either, because she's been through a lot of shit too. So that kind of stuff, again, that can pass down. Maybe Paula's mother had, came from an abusive relationship and she just dealt with it and passed that kind of acceptance of that kind of abuse down to Paula. Now Paula's doing it, and then she passes it down to Alex. And it's one of those things where you don't even realize what you're doing. And I think we have a moment in that, and it's one of my favorite moments in this series, where I feel like it kind of comes full circle for Alex as she realizes, like, I thought that I was beyond ending up in these same cycles that everyone else ends up in, and that my mother was in and all this. I thought I was better than this. And now I have to humble myself and realize that I'm not. I'm going to have to continue to fight harder so that to stay out of this cycle, because I'm prone to it too. And I want to talk about this scene that I'm speaking of, but I'm trying to keep this non-spoiler so that people who watch this can decide if they want to watch this series without me telling them, like, the big beats or whatever that happened throughout the show. So there's an obvious indictment as well on domestic violence. I don't think we need anyone to tell us domestic violence is the wrong thing to do. But like I said, it's something that is passed down from Alex's mother down to Alex. We see that this many examples of these repeated cycles of someone going to this domestic violence shelter, leaving and coming back, going and leaving and coming back, and just not being able to get out of these toxic situations. And then that ties in with the indictment on how the government does people, because they want to get out and they're like, okay, I'm gonna get out of this abusive relationship. And then the government goes, okay, we're going to need you to fill out this giant stack of paperwork to prove that you were abused, so that you can then be allowed to fill out this other giant stack of paperwork that will allow us to help you and make it so that you can actually separate and cut off all ties from this person without running back to them out of necessity. And that's where we're fucked up in this country, is that I feel like this show is telling me, because obviously I wouldn't know, that a lot of these women are not just like, there's the perception that they just are almost like gluttons for punishment. Like, oh, why would you go back to this guy because of blah, 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 blah. And I think this show shows you that someone who wants to do the right thing and is trying to do the right thing, that circumstances and the difficulties and the red tape and the hoops that the government makes you jump through in order to try to start a life on your own without this abuse can just end up pushing you right back into that same situation again. And it makes these people a lot more, it makes it easier to be empathetic to somebody who ends up in this cycle of abuse. So I want to talk about a few more of the pros that I thought about this series, and I don't really have any cons. I thought I had a con, but I kind of didn't. But I'll get to that in a minute. So the biggest pro is the acting performances. You have Margaret Qualley as Alex. She's incredible. She's just incredible. If you haven't seen The Leftovers, drop what you're doing. Well, not what you're doing if you're watching this video, but after this video, go watch The Leftovers. One of the best shows of all time, in my opinion. Season 2 is probably one of, if not the best single season of television I've ever seen. Margaret Qualley plays the daughter on this show, and she's incredible on that show. And then in this show, in the lead role, she's again incredible. My hat's off to Margaret Qualley; she's incredible. Nick Robinson plays Sean, her abusive boyfriend. He's great too. He does a great job of kind of like making you think like, oh, he's okay. He's not that bad when he's not drunk. And then you realize, nope, Sean's just a piece of shit too. But again, Sean's a piece of shit because of that's just kind of what he was born into. He comes from a line of piece of shit people, and they make children who don't know that that's not normal and that's not the way to be until it's too late. And he does a great job of threading that needle between being somebody who you want to feel sympathetic for and who you want Alex to go back to, and someone who you're just like, you know what, fuck him, man, fuck Sean. And it's so easy to hate a guy named Sean, isn't it? Like especially when it's Sean, like it is on this, like Shawn. You kind of be like, oh, okay, Sean, he might be all right. Sean, those guys are always pieces of shit, man. And then lastly, Andie MacDowell, again, the legend. I was highly not into what she was doing at the start of this show. I'm like, what the fuck is this over-the-top ridiculous shit that Andie MacDowell's doing for no reason? But as the show continues, this is what I thought was going to be my con when I started watching the show. As the show continues and you learn more about just who Paula, that's who Andie MacDowell plays, you learn more about Paula and you come to understand more about this character and how this eccentric life of hers almost masks a lot of pain and trauma that she has dealt with. And to see her constantly not only not be there for her daughter, but to actually cause more drama and issues for her daughter, it's really sad to watch. And she goes from somebody who is like, wow, this is a wildly eccentric and interesting character, to why is she this wildly problematic? And she is a terrible, terrible influence on her daughter, but she wants to do good. But again, like I've said a million times, that shit, I feel like that shit just bleeds into your DNA generationally. So Andie MacDowell completely crushes this. So couple more thoughts. Actually, this is one con. I forgot about this one. There are moments where we kind of get jolted out of reality, and Alex starts to interpret or see things that are not actually happening. And it's an interesting device, but I kind of felt like it was a little hokey for something that's meant to be taken this seriously at face value, to have like these moments where she's seeing and imagining things that aren't happening. It's not a huge deal, but I thought like, I didn't really need this. Like they do a great job at other times of without using this strategy. So what I mean with this strategy is like, there are moments where she'll be having a conversation with another character, and then that character will start saying things that we know is the perception. Like you realize like, oh wait, they're not actually saying that to Alex. This is Alex imagining, this is her own self-consciousness imagining the perception of her and what this person might be saying. Like, oh, you're a poor piece of shit. Like, okay, wait, the social worker's not going to call them a poor piece of shit. That's what she's imagining the social worker doing. And like, I get that, but I think they did a great job of conveying how people feel and treat people in these situations without having it be like this weird kind of jolting me out of the reality situation with having her imagining these reactions. So I didn't really like that, but it doesn't happen a lot. It mainly happens at the beginning, and it's not a huge deal at all. This show kind of reminded me of an extended version of Pursuit of Happiness, the Will Smith and Jaden Smith movie, which again revolves around a single parent who is struggling to find a job to take care of their kid. And this even has, this isn't a spoiler because it's literally in the movie poster, you could see Margaret Qualley sitting on the ground with like a bunch of cleaning supplies. I didn't even mention that she becomes a maid. That's like kind of the that's the point. It's called Maid. That's what she does when she runs off from Sean. She becomes like this maid for hire. Then they treat her like shit and don't pay her a lot of money. And there's a moment where she's in the poster, she's sitting on the floor and you can see like cleaning supplies and her kid with her. And there's a moment in this series, this is going to be the only thing I'm going to quote unquote spoil, where she ends up sleeping on the floor of this ferry that's supposed to be taking her to this island with her kid because she didn't have anywhere to go. And it really mirrors the best scene in Pursuit of Happiness, when Will Smith and his kid are in this bathroom in, I think it was like a bus station or something, and he locks the door and he's got his like foot up against it and people are knocking on and he's crying, holding his kid. Very Pursuit of Happiness this show is. So again, not a knock, just an observation. And then lastly, Paula has a fling with this guy, this boyfriend named Basil, who or she calls him Basil, and Alex constantly calls him Cilantro, which I think is clever. But then this guy, he's Australian, and he's from Perth, and I felt like that was a nice tie-in to The Leftovers. I don't know if that was intentional, but I'm not going to spoil The Leftovers here either. But the Perth is heavily involved in The Leftovers, so for her to have this Australian boyfriend from Perth in a show where that's starring Margaret Qualley, who was also on The Leftovers, I thought it was a nice little tie-in. So, all in all, I thought this was an incredible series. This is probably going to end up in my top 10 shows of 2021. I thought it was really great work. It's an easy watch in the sense of like, you know, it's a straightforward 10 episodes, about an hour piece kind of show. It's not something that you know you're gonna have to feel like you can only bite off small chunks at a time. It's not overly complicated. It's just watching, you know, someone deal with a rough time and how they get through it and how they persevere. So, highly recommended on my part. I'm going to put this in my strongest recommendations playlist, which if you don't know that exists, you do now. So you can check that out as well. And I'll see you next time. I'm going to be reviewing the new Dune film, which I've already watched. I'm going to watch it a second time before I do a video about it. I got Succession going on. Ted Lasso just wrapped up. Scenes from a Marriage just wrapped up. We got Insecure starting on Sunday. I may cover You season 3 once I'm done with it. I'm not going to do episode by episode of that. And that's a little sneak peek of what's coming down the pipe in October. And then there's a ton coming in November. So I'll see you guys then. Peace.